Roman holiday begins with a dream that almost every person has had at least once. To walk away from duty for just one day and live as if the world belongs to you alone. In this story, that dream belongs to a princess, and the day she steals for herself becomes the kind of romance that can only exist because it cannot last. The film opens in Rome during a formal tour by Princess Anne, a young royal traveling through Europe on a schedule so rigid it barely leaves room for breathing. Every hour of her day is arranged in advance, every smile is expected, every handshake is part of ceremony. Anne moves through receptions, speeches, and endless lines of officials while wearing the perfect clothes and perfect manners of a woman born into obligation. But under all that grace, there is a young person who is exhausted. She is trapped, everyone around her treats her with respect, but no one lets her live like an ordinary human being. She cannot choose her own dinner, her own bedtime, or even how long she stays in one room. When one more evening of formal duties pushes her too far, she finally breaks down. She tells the people around her that she is tired of being managed and longs for simple things most people never even notice: to walk in the street, to do what she wants, to feel like herself. A doctor is called to calm her and he gives her a sedative. But before the medicine fully takes effect, Anne slips out of the embassy and wanders into Rome alone. That is the first real choice she has made in a long time. Dazed and half asleep, she ends up sitting on a bench in the city with no protection, no plan, and no idea how vulnerable she suddenly is. That is where Joe Bradley finds her. Joe is an American reporter living in Rome, a man with charm, intelligence, and just enough cynicism to get through journalism. He has been out late and is on his way home when he notices Anne in her strange condition. At first he assumes she's just a drunk young woman from a wealthy family. She can barely stand, hardly answer questions, and eventually falls asleep where she sits. Joe tries to help her get home, but she is too confused to explain where she belongs. With nowhere else to take her, he brings her back to his apartment and puts her to sleep on his bed while he spends the night in a chair. The next morning, Joe wakes up late and rushes to work, already irritated with the inconvenience this mystery woman has caused him. When he gets to the newsroom, everything changes. A major royal scandal is unfolding. Princess Anne has vanished from the embassy. Her staff claims she is ill and resting, but the press has been tipped off that something is wrong. Then Joe sees the official photo. The woman asleep in his apartment is the missing princess. For a reporter, this is the opportunity of a lifetime. Joe immediately understands what an exclusive interview and private story about the runaway princess would be worth. He sees money, career advantage, and a giant scoop before anyone else in Rome even knows where she is. So instead of reporting what he knows, he makes a decision. He will go back, pretend not to know who she is, spend the day with her, and gather the story himself. At this point, the movie becomes a delicate balance between selfish motive and genuine human connection. Joe begins the day with a scheme, but that scheme starts slipping the moment Anne wakes up and begins tasting freedom. When Joe returns, Anne is embarrassed and determined to act normal even though she's still hiding her identity. She gives a fake name and insists she will be fine. Joe plays along. He introduces himself, offers breakfast, and behaves as if he has no idea who she really is. Then he secretly contacts his photographer friend Irving Radovich and tells him to follow them. Irving, excited by the idea of secret photographs of the princess on the loose, joins the plan immediately. Anne decides that if she truly has one free day, she is going to use every second of it. She is not trying to start a scandal or rebel against the world forever. She just wants to live. She wants the ordinary life that has always been denied to her. And because Joe knows Rome well and wants to stay close for his story, he becomes her guide through that freedom. The first stop is a small but important one. Anne gets her hair cut short at a little barbershop. It is impulsive, modern, and thrilling for her. The long, formal style of the princess disappears, and in its place emerges a younger, lighter version of herself. Joe watches this transformation with amusement at first, but something in him is already shifting. She is becoming a person in front of him. From there, they walk through the city like two ordinary people with no duties at all. Anne buys ice cream and eats it in public with pure delight. She sits on the Spanish steps, watches the life around her, and lets the city touch her directly for the first time. Everything feels new to her because nothing has ever been hers in this way. Joe keeps the day moving, half escort, half conspirator, while Irving lurks nearby taking hidden photographs whenever he can. They visit markets, streets, and famous corners of Rome, and slowly the mood between them changes. Joe still tells himself he is working, but the pleasure he begins taking in her happiness is no longer the pleasure of a reporter getting a better story. It is something softer. He likes seeing the world through her eyes. And meanwhile, trusts him because he gives her what everyone else in her life withholds: space, laughter, choice. One of the most memorable moments happens at the mouth of truth, an old carved stone face said to bite off the hand of a liar. Joe plays a prank there, pretending disaster has struck, and Anne's fear turns instantly into laughter once she sees the joke. It is a small scene, but it matters because by then they are no longer just spending time together. They are building private memories. The day keeps unfolding, and Joe rents a scooter so they can ride through Rome together. The sequence is chaotic and joyful, and exactly the kind of trouble Anne has never been allowed to have. They speed through traffic, crash into the normal life of the city, and turn freedom into motion. For Anne, this is proof that she exists outside titles and ceremony. For Joe, it is the point where the line between using her and caring for her becomes harder to ignore. At one point, they even dance on a riverside barge where music, lights, and the warm Roman night make everything feel suspended outside consequence. This should be the most magical part of their day, and in some ways it is. But the world they escaped has finally caught up. Secret agents sent by the embassy have been tracking Anne, and they close in on her during the dance. What follows is sudden, frantic, and surprisingly physical. Joe fights to protect her. Irving gets drawn into the chaos. Anne herself is no helpless figure either. She pushes back, hits back, and helps create the chance for escape. In the confusion, she and Joe end up jumping into the river and swimming away from the men trying to pull her back into royal control. By the time they climb out of the water, drenched and breathless, the romance between them is no longer hidden behind jokes or convenience. They have shared too much for that. Joe has spent the whole day trying to turn a human being into a story and has instead fallen in love with her. Anne has spent the day trying to be ordinary and has found someone who treated that wish as something beautiful rather than childish. They return to Joe's apartment in the late hours of the night, and the mood changes again. The city outside is quiet. The day is almost over. Both of them know it. For the first time, the fact that Anne is a princess and Joe is a journalist stops being background and becomes the central truth they can no longer avoid. Anne now realizes that Joe knew who she was all along. He admits it without trying to excuse himself too much. The hidden photographs exist. The story could still be sold. Yet by then the emotional truth between them is stronger than the dishonesty that started the day. Joe no longer wants the scoop. He wants the impossible thing, which is more time. But that is the one thing Anne cannot give. She knows she has to return. The responsibility she fled for a day is still waiting, and even after tasting freedom, she understands that running forever is not a real life. So Joe takes her back to the embassy. Their goodbye outside the gates is quiet and devastating because both know what they are saying without needing dramatic speeches. If she walks inside, the day ends. The version of themselves they became together cannot continue. Joe kisses her and lets her go. Anne returns to the palace world of rooms, dresses, protocol, and waiting officials, but she is not the same person who slipped out the night before. Joe returns home with Irving and the hidden photographs that could make them famous. Now comes the final moral test. Joe could still publish everything. No one would blame him in the world of newspapers, but Joe has changed. The day showed him the difference between exposing someone and truly seeing them, so he decides not to use the story at all. The next scene takes place at a formal press conference where Princess Anne has resumed her duties. She appears in full royal composure once more, greeting the press exactly as expected, yet the audience can feel the difference in her. She has lived something real now, and the knowledge of it sits underneath every calm gesture. Joe and Irving attend the conference like ordinary reporters. When Anne sees Joe among the journalists, there is a brief pause in the careful machinery of the room. They speak only through the language available to them there, formal words in front of everyone else, but the feeling underneath is unmistakable. She recognizes what he has chosen to protect. He recognizes the cost of her return. At the end of the conference, Irving quietly returns the photographs to the royal staff, unopened and unpublished. It is the final confirmation that the story is dead by their own choice. Joe gets no scandal or promotion. What he keeps instead is something more painful and more valuable: the memory of the day exactly as it was, untouched by public greed. Then the press conference ends. Joe lingers for a moment after everyone else leaves, standing alone in the great room where they just said goodbye without saying it. It is one of the most powerful endings in romance because nothing is forced. They do not run toward each other. They do not abandon the world. They simply part with dignity, carrying something neither of them expected to find. Roman Holiday works because it understands that romance can be deep even when it is brief. Joe and Anne do not build a life together. They meet at exactly the wrong moment, become fully alive in each other's company, and then choose not to destroy that memory by trying to turn it into something impossible. The film is also about the cost of freedom. Anne learns that freedom is wonderful, but it is sweetest precisely because she has never had it. Joe learns that love can make success look cheap. Both leave the story changed by a day the world will never fully know happened. So Roman Holiday ends not with triumph but with grace. A princess gets one day to be ordinary. A reporter gets one chance to be noble. They fall in love in the middle of Rome and lose each other almost immediately. But for one perfect day, both of them get to live as if life belonged to them, and that is enough to make the goodbye unforgettable.